A bitter standoff over Georgia's next president has led to more protests, deepening the country's political crisis. On Saturday, pro-EU demonstrators rallied outside Parliament to protest the appointment of former soccer player Mikheil Kavelashvili, forcing authorities to postpone the switch-on of festive lights. The incumbent president says she won't step down until new elections are held. Natalie Sabanadze is Senior Research Fellow for the Russia and Eurasia Programme at the International Affairs think tank Chatham House, and she was also a former Georgian ambassador to the European Union. Welcome to DW, great to have you on the show. So this tug of war between government and opposition is continuing. Is there a way to bring both sides together?
Well, as the time goes by, I think the crisis deepens and the options begin to narrow. At the moment, it seems like there are really two options out of this crisis that the government has. One is to crack down and claim full victory, no matter the cost. And another is, and that would lead to further authoritarian turn of the country, which it seems to be already on the path. And another option is a democratic way out of the crisis, which would be calling new elections, restoring legitimacy of the parliament and the government, and returning the country to democratic and hence European path of development.
Right. Now, you were Georgia's ambassador to the European Union. What can the EU do to prevent Georgia from moving away from the bloc?
Well, first of all, we have to say that a full majority of the Georgian public supports European integration. Polls consistently demonstrate that it is about 80% of support. So the government's move is very much in contradiction to the choice of the people. European, and the protest is obviously the sign of it. We saw with this appointment of the president sort of a picture of the crumbling of European institutional democracy in Georgia, because presidency was the last institution that was not controlled by the party in control, Georgian Dream, and now that is also being reclaimed. So European Union has to act both as a normative and geopolitical power, which it claims to be. This means acting in pursuit of its interests, in pursuit of its geopolitical interest, but without jeopardizing the values. And I think here, the interests of the EU and interests of the Georgian public, those people who are protesting, who are fighting to return democratic Georgia, actually coincide. So the EU has to send a very clear signal to the government that these actions of turning Georgia into authoritarian state are unacceptable, that they will not help Georgia with the EU path, but they also have to increase costs on the Georgian Dream. There are various options at the table. You can have diplomatic cold order, but also sanctions. It is also very important that EU sends a signal of unity. So far, we have not seen a statement of the 27 member states, and that's the problem.
Right. Considering what you're saying there, and also the Georgian Dream parties will say shift away from the European Union, are we going to be seeing Georgia then rely more on countries like Russia and China? And what is actually in it for the Georgian Dream Party?
Well, Georgian Dream Party will try to demonstrate to the public that it is managing isolation, that it has alternatives to the West. The rhetoric that they are pushing forward lately is very similar to the Russian rhetoric, and that is about the Western decline, about other powers rising. So there are already signs that the shift in the foreign policy and the shift also in the domestic policy will push Georgian dream to pursue more this kind of what we call multi-alignment. There is already rapprochement with Russia, which is clear. There is deepening cooperation with China. The Georgian dream leadership will try to pursue other connections with those countries where they have this kind of regime alignment, especially those hybrid regimes or authoritarian regimes that do not particularly care what you do domestically. They have other interests, the kind of pursuit of transactional foreign policy. This would be an attempt to substitute a very strong Western partnership that has been built by Georgia for the past 30 years.
Now, considering what we've been talking about in this conversation, are you hopeful that there still might be a chance to turn the situation around in Georgia?
So I started out by saying that the picture that we saw with this presidential nomination was the sort of crumbling of institutional democracy. However, the protests outside show also a very resilient society, a democratically resilient society. There is high demand from the public that this is not the course that Georgia should be pursuing. I think the crisis is likely to deepen because neither side is willing to give up. These people are standing there for third week in a row in freezing temperatures and are determined to have their voices heard. And as I said, the options, the room for maneuver for the authorities is also narrowing. In fact, they are also showing signs of radicalization and sending signals that they are not willing to concede anything, to negotiate on anything. So there will have to be a way out of this crisis. And I am hopeful that a democratic solution would be found. But of course, there is no guarantee of this.
Really interesting to have you on the show and great analysis. And it's always great to have your insights. So Natalie Sabanadze from Chatham House, thank you for joining us on DW today.